Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cynthia if you are new here, and recently I discovered a new series that I am completely obsessed with. I feel like if you've read these books, you either really like them or really dislike them. It seems there's been a little bit of discourse in the bookish community about these books, but for the most part, it seems people really like them, and I can easily include myself in the category of people that really like them. So today, I would like to discuss The Wolf King and the Night Prince by Lauren Palphreyman, and if I'm pronouncing that wrong, I apologize. I'm probably going to pronounce it again incorrectly, but here we are. So honestly, I don't have any housekeeping. You should know by now these are just my opinions, and if you disagree with them, we can still be friends. So with that being said, let's just jump right into The Wolf King. Also, just a quick disclaimer, I'm kind of switching things up in the book review space of mine. I don't think there was anything wrong with the way that I was doing the book reviews before, but I don't really like talking about the plot and the writing and the tropes and the plot devices and all this technical stuff. I just read for the vibes. If I'm being honest. Who was it? I think it was Adam Brody who referred to himself as a faux intellect, and that's kind of what I feel like sometimes because I read a lot, yes, but I read a lot of fantasy romance, and to be honest, a lot of it is just for escapism. I got really tired of feeling like I needed to heavily criticize books, and I'm also not really interested in talking about books that I didn't like because I don't really want that on the internet. So just a quick little disclaimer. I guess I did have some housekeeping that I forgot about at the beginning of the video, but if you like this new format, it's going to be summary, what I loved, what I didn't really like, as well as some final thoughts. If you go to cynthiainthewild.com, my blog, I promise it's not a plug. It's just you can see it in action there. I also have a small vibe check section, if you will, that I might put in the description just for the sake of filming and editing. But let me know if you like this format. I'm not set on it. I'm not dead set on this format. I'm just kind of experimenting. And so if you like it, that is great feedback for me. And if you don't, that's also great feedback for me because then I can continue to tweak and reconfigure. But anyway, let's get into my thoughts on The Wolf King. So the first book, which I believe to be a 3-part trilogy in the Wolf King series, is The Wolf King. And in The Wolf King, we meet our main character, Princess Aurora. The story opens up right on the eve of her wedding to a really slimy man named Sebastian. He's semi-relevant, and I'll touch on that later, but it is the night before her wedding. She's watching a dog fight. She's really not feeling it. Everyone else is, and at one point, an alpha is forced to fight a very young pup, and Aurora is very much against this, and she stops it, earning her probably more scorn than she deserved over it, but essentially this alpha ends up kidnapping her, and that's really where the story begins. Aurora is really just someone who feels trapped within her own life. She feels like she has not been allowed to make her own decisions, and so her getting kidnapped really starts her own character development. We also get to know more about the wolves. This is a werewolf minus the nodding story, so if you're not into werewolves, that's cool. I don't read a lot of books with werewolves. I'm really more of a fairy kind of girl, if that wasn't obvious. But this was interesting. It was very refreshing. But anyway, Aurora is kidnapped, and the wolves believe that she is the key to resolving this conflict that's going on between the wolves and the humans, and thus the story begins. So let's jump into my thoughts, because I have a lot of thoughts on this one. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't read a lot of werewolf stories. It's not that I don't like werewolves. I feel like maybe werewolf fantasy romance novels haven't been as popular, or werewolves just weren't at the forefront of the story. I had to share page time with other types of paranormal creatures. I don't know what I'm saying right now. My point is that I don't read a lot of werewolf stories, but I am open to them. So if you have any good recommendations, I would love to hear them. Please don't recommend Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Thank you so much. But what I really enjoyed about this book was that the wolf characters I actually found to be far more interesting than the human ones. The human characters felt a little one-dimensional. They just all were like haters. They weren't stans. They were very much haters. And I just got bored with that after a while. The werewolves, however, felt more dynamic and complex. I felt like they all had very different, for the most part, personalities, which I really liked. And it honestly just kept the story far more interesting than the human one-dimensional characters. And this book I did also listen to the audiobook of. The audiobook narrators were really good. I believe it was Stella Bloom for Aurora, and cannot remember the man who narrated Callum. I will Google it and put it on the screen. I apologize, but they did a very good job. I think their voices worked together very nicely, and they both did a really good job of getting into character, especially Caleb. Every time Caleb's character would go, I don't know, it was so easy to visualize in my head of how I picture Callum to look, of him just like going, hey, I don't know. Silly tidbit. If you've read the book, if you haven't, sorry. It wasn't a spoiler, but just didn't make much sense. I did also like the pacing in this book. I felt like the beginning didn't take too long to get into. I've definitely read books where I'm almost halfway in and I'm just like, when does it get interesting? That's not an issue with this book. It pretty much picks up right away, and honestly, I really appreciated that. I really appreciated that. Also, there's a character named Blake who I really like, and let me just tell you, after the second book, my affection for him is pretty much insufferable, so I apologize. But I really liked the characters. I've heard comparisons of people saying that Blake and Callum are Reese and Tamlin of A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and why are y'all doing Callum dirty like that? Why? Callum is not Tamlin, and Blake is not Reese. Can we please stop with the comparisons? Thank you. And in terms of what I didn't like, the world building felt very lackluster, and the descriptions of the world were also very weird. I don't know if this was just me. If it was just me, please tell me so I can reread the story. But it felt like it was either gray, dying land, cloudy skies, or we were in a lush green forest, and there was no in between. I also didn't really understand how the world itself worked per se. It was very clear that the wolves had gone up to the north and the humans kind of entertained the southern territories, but other than that, I ain't got a clue as to what's going on in the rest of this world. This book also contains one of my top 3 most hated tropes. I hate the miscommunication trope, I hate the virgin trope, and I absolutely hate the pregnancy trope. And this one has the virgin trope, which I didn't really like. And to be honest, it is a little spicy. I'd say 2 chili peppers worth of spice. And to be honest, I just found it cringe. I did not like it. I did not like Callum being more experienced than Aurora. I just didn't like it. I don't want to get too into it. I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me. I don't think there's anything wrong with it per se. I just think for me, because I really don't like that trope, I just didn't like it. And I will say, I wasn't really a fan of the ending of this book either. It wasn't a massive cliffhanger, but it wasn't that great either. It just felt a little over the top, and the author was trying to really maximize the oh my god, the wow factor, whatever. I don't know what I'm saying right now. But I just wasn't really a fan of it. I felt like some of the stuff that happened didn't really need to happen. I think it sets it up nicely for the opening of the second book, but as for the ending of the first book, wasn't the biggest fan, but again, preference. I also forgot to add in my new book review format, after my vibe check, I have a would I recommend it and would I recommend The Wolf King? Yes. I would recommend this book if you're into werewolves, paranormal romance / fantasy romance, werewolves, enemies to lovers, but they're not really enemies. Are they ever really enemies? Political unrest, forbidden attraction. If you like that kind of stuff, I think you should read this. If you pick up this book because you think it is like ACOTAR, no, you shouldn't read it if you think it's like ACOTAR. All in all, The Wolf King was a very good book. I very much enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars out of 5 stars. I will also note Aurora is a little annoying. She's a little annoying. She's not as bad as Diem from Spark of the Everflame, but she could be a little smarter. I would say she's Fyra in ACOTAR, where it's like, girl, what are you doing? It's kind of like that opinion, whatever, of her. And I want to say she gets better, but you're gonna have to find out for yourself. But overall, honestly, I really enjoyed this book. The vibes were vibing. I can't complain too much. I can complain about anything, but I'm not going to complain that much about this book. I will also say this book has, or well, not this book, this series has a love triangle, which I didn't think I would like because I don't normally like love triangles. I feel like a lot of authors don't really do the whole love triangle like justice. I feel like a lot of authors kind of fumble it, and no fault of their own. I just think everyone has a different idea of what a good love triangle is, and it's just preference. But I didn't mind the love triangle in this book, and I will say it's not fair because one corner of the triangle, I'm just like, I know I'm supposed to be rooting for you, but I'm not. I like that corner of the love triangle. Sorry. So honestly, 4 stars out of 5 stars. Great start to the series. It sets things up really nicely. I do wish the world building was a little better and Aurora wasn't as annoying. All in all, can't complain. 4.5 stars. 4 stars out of 5 stars for the rating, and I would say 2 chili peppers out of 5 chili peppers for the spice rating. But let's move on to the Night Prince. Before I jump into my thoughts, can I just show you Amazon? did me so dirty. I don't know what happened during shipping, but it's like they dropped it and then stepped on it. I don't know what happened to the corner. Luckily, the rest of the book is fine. They just dented the corner so bad. I can't seem to smooth it out. I just wanted you to know. I wanted to share that with you. But in The Night Prince, we essentially pick up where the Wolf King ended. I don't really know how to summarize this one without spoiling too much, but essentially Blake and Aurora are now linked. Their lives are now tied together. So Callum unfortunately can't off Blake, and he's pretty pissed. Not that I blame him, but under set circumstances, some choices that were less than desirable had to be made. So here we are. But Callum, Aurora, and Blake are all forced to work together. Aurora's trying to break the bond, but there are also a lot of darker forces happening. For example, the God of Night's acolytes are starting to rise again, which is very bad for the wolves and also very bad for the humans. So the wolves and the humans should we still be enemies? I think we have a bigger enemy. So there are just a lot of dark and powerful forces at play happening behind the scenes of the main plot, which is Callum, Aurora, and Blake. So I think that's all I can say without spoilers. So I'm just gonna jump right into my thoughts. So this one I also listened to as an audiobook, and oh my god, Blake got his own narrator. Also, side note, the narrator also narrates for Rhys in the ACOTAR books. You're welcome. If you didn't know that, that was very exciting. So obviously, beloved narrator right off the bat. But Callum has his own narrator, Aurora has her own narrator, and now Blake does as well. And he did an absolute fantastic job of narrating Blake. I could not stop listening. Want to listen again, not gonna lie. A little obsessed with Blake. Told you it was gonna get worse. I apologize. But Blake plays a much bigger role in this book. Like I said, there is a lot happening behind the scenes with Blake and Aurora that Aurora is kind of starting to figure out. I think Callum figures it out really fast. But Aurora obviously is a little slow in the jump. I really liked that we get more Blake in this book because honestly, I think by this point I was in it for Blake. Sorry, Callum, it's the truth. But I also really liked the pacing of this one too. There were a few spots where it dragged on a little bit, but for the most part, the pacing was pretty on par with this, not the second book, with the first book, which I enjoyed. And can I also just the tension in this book was fantastic. It was fantastic. I really liked the tension in this book, not just between our main characters and their love triangle. I also really liked just the tension overall. You could feel it in every facet of this book. The political unrest and the love triangle and just everything, like the wolves, the humans, the introduction of the newer characters that we get. There was just so much tension and it was delicious. There were also a lot of twists and turns, which some of them I actually saw coming, which kind of surprised me because I'm a little dense when it comes to plot twists. So I don't know, maybe I was just really paying attention to this one. But there were a few things that I didn't like. Like I said, there are a lot of twists and turns and not all of them make sense. There's a lot packed into this book, which if you're someone who likes a lot of plot lines and lore and mythology and things like that, then you will like the plot of this book. For me, it was a little bit too much. It felt like the author was trying to stuff a lot in there and there just wasn't enough room. It was an overpacked suitcase. And like I said, Callum's anger is justified over everything that's happening with Aurora and Blake, but I did find the whole Callum, Aurora, song and dance thing to just get a little tiring. Just end it. Just rip off the band-aid. Aurora is really trying to figure out who she is. I feel like in the Northlands with the wolves, she's able to learn more about herself, what she likes, what she doesn't like. I think she has a lot more freedom in the Northlands with the wolves than she did in the Southlands with her father and the court of her kingdom. Sorry, Ziggy came to say hello and my arm is kind of tired, but Callum's anger is justified. Aurora is really trying to dig deep and figure out who she is and what she wants, and because she's had a lot more freedom to do so, wish her character development had been a little better than what it was. I think she's still very hyper-dependent on the men around her, and I wish she had learned a little bit more dependence, so to speak. There are also a lot of dream sequences in this book because we do get to know a lot more about Blake, and the dream sequences at first were fine, but after a while they started to feel like a crutch. There were just so many of them. Wish that the author had given us more background on Blake in other ways, not just mainly through the dreamscapes. But the ending of this book was even crazier than the first book. I still think about it sometimes. It will randomly pop into my head and I'm just like, oh my God. I'm just like, oh my God, I need the next book. But anyway, would I recommend it? Yes. If you read The Wolf King and you liked it, even if you had to push through it a little bit, I think if you enjoyed The Wolf King, you should definitely read The Night Prince. I think this one is better than The Wolf King, in my opinion. I'm a bigger fan of this one than I was the first one. It's kind of like Phantasma and Enchantra, where I really enjoyed Phantasma, but I love Enchantra. So this is the same situation as that. I don't know what's up with that, but I think if you like the first one, you should definitely read the second one. If you weren't really into The Wolf King, don't pick up this one. Don't bother. Just don't bother. Just leave it alone, because if you didn't like the first one, a lot of what happens in the first book is amplified in the second book. And so if you just weren't vibing with The Wolf King, don't pick up The Night Prince. But if you are just obsessed with Blake, then yes, then just read it for Blake. Just skip all the Callum and Aurora scenes. That's such bad advice, but I do think you should read it if you like The Wolf King. If you didn't, I think you can skip it. I think you can just put the series down and leave it alone. Overall though, like I said, I just like to read for the vibes. I don't always want to deep dive and dissect every book that I read. And I feel like this series is one of those where I'm just like, I'm here for the vibe, man. And I like the vibe. It is resonating with me. And it's not perfect by any means. It definitely has its flaws and problems that could be cleaned up, that hopefully are cleaned up by the time the third one comes out. But it's up to the author. The author's going to do what the author's going to do, and we're just going to have to deal with it. But regardless, I really like the characters. Aurora does annoy me. I'm not going to lie. She's just a little annoying. But I do like the characters. I do like the werewolves. I found them to be very interesting. And while the plotline does get a little crazy at sometimes, it did keep my attention. Like I said, the pacing was really great. It got to the point and just went, but didn't take forever to get there. And I wasn't sitting here going, oh my God, are we there yet? We just jumped right in, which I really appreciated. I was looking up to see if there is news on the third book yet. There really isn't. From what I saw, there isn't even a title yet for it. And it looks like it's supposed to be published sometime in 2026. So at minimum 6 months, if we're talking early 2026, worst case, little over a year for the next book. I just died a little inside. But I'll be fine. I'm looking forward to continuing it. I will definitely be giving both of these books a reread. Definitely the audiobook, definitely the second book now that Blake has his own narrator. But The Night Prince gets a solid 4.25 stars out of 5 stars. And let me tell you something, that 0.25 extra star rating is literally just because Blake got his own narrator. That's it. That's the only reason. And the spice meter for The Night Prince, I would give it an extra chili pepper. I would say 3 chili peppers out of 5 chili peppers. I forgot to mention. I'm revamping these reviews, so I'm forgetting little bits and pieces. But overall, this series has been really fun so far. I really resonated with it. I'm not really sure why, but it just really captured my attention, and I had such a fun time just reading the books or listening to the books, which yes, counts as reading. I don't care. But I really just had a fun time, and I think if you have Libby and you can borrow the audiobooks, you definitely should give them a listen. I think they're definitely worth your time, and I am very impatiently waiting the third book to be published at some point in 2026. Honestly, if the author decides to take longer, I'll still wait because I need to know what happens with Blake. Sorry if things look a little bit different. My battery just died. That was fun. But honestly, I have really enjoyed reading these two. I definitely recommend them if you're into paranormal / fantasy romance, werewolves, minus the nodding. I have yet to read a book with nodding, so I feel like I am myself a werewolf virgin, and I can't really count being Team Jacob from Twilight because they were just friends. Jacob was too good for Bella, but we're not here to talk about that. So let me stay on track. But I really like these two. Like I've said at least a dozen times by now, I don't really have anything else to add to them or about them. But if you're looking for more books to add to your TBR, definitely consider The Wolf King and The Night Prince. I had a great time. The vibe check was chef's kiss for me. And I don't want to keep saying that I really enjoyed it, but I did. And if you do have any werewolfy book recommendations with or without nodding, I'm open to them. I'm open to expanding my horizons because I really am a fairy girl. Fairies and elves, man. Fairies, elves, and dragons seem to be the core 3 of my fantasy romance reading experience thus far. So I'm open to recommendations if you have any. And like I said, I am working on tweaking these book reviews, so I also love your feedback on that. I know the formatting doesn't always translate perfectly between writing a blog post and filming a video. But you can check out the new format on my blog if you're interested. If not, totally fine. But just know that there might be a few more changes when it comes to my book reviews and things like that. But honestly, these two were a fantastic time. I cannot recommend the audiobooks enough if you have access to them. If not, I believe these both are on Kindle Unlimited. I had to check. Yes, they are both on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can also read them there. They might be available through your library as ebooks. I don't remember if I saw ebook versions. I just remember that I was looking for the audiobook versions. So that you're gonna have to do a little bit of research on. But all in all, cannot recommend them enough. They passed the vibe check. I am dying for the third book, and it was genuinely so nice to yap with you about books again. I have missed it. I have missed it a lot. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Bye.